Hey, QED coders. Actually, let me make sure that I'm actually streaming. I just hit the button in OBS, and I forgot to check to make sure that we had a stream scheduled. So, just checking YouTube, making sure that that it got started. But while I'm getting logged in and typing in passwords and all of that fun stuff, and I can't type a password while I talk at the same time, welcome. This is the historical modeling stand-up, where we talk about historical modeling. We talk about the immutable runtime that is Jinaga, and we make progress toward creating an ecosystem where companies model their business historically and share the information with one another in a controlled and deliberate fashion. Also quite secure. So, hitting the go live button, checking the stream. It is live. Excellent. All right. Jan is not going to be joining us today, but I'm going to go through a few things that I've been able to accomplish over the week, and we can talk about where janaga.net is and how close we are to Jan being able to rebuild his service application using jinaga.net. In the next few weeks, I think we'll see that come together, and I think we'll also have a time for doing an overview, doing some more state of Jinaga videos where I share with everybody what the current state is and how far we've come. So for today, I want to focus on a brand new tool. Let me show you the tool that I am talking about. It is right here. So let me do the screen share, even though Jan's not on, but that way if somebody joins us live, they would be able to catch up. Okay. And I'm also checking to see if I can put this on the stream in such a way. Yeah, you see here, I have that rectangle in the wrong place. Let me do a quick edit on that. And, well, let's go ahead and use this one. All right. So we don't have Jan in the other window over there, but this one you'll still be able to see me. You'll be able to see the screen. Let's talk about Jinaga tool. So, Jinaga tool is a command line tool that we can use to deploy authorization and distribution rules to a replicator. What the heck are we talking about? Well, if you are new here, then you may not have seen the Jinaga replicator as a service. So dev.jinaga.com, that's where I am trying this this technology out here. So we're building this piece by piece, deploying it to the development server. And right now, these replicators are just for testing. So this is a beta service. But a replicator gives you an API. That's what this URL is for. It gives you a database. And it gives you authentication. And it gives you security. So security in the form of authorization, which you might be expecting, and distribution, which is not a term that you often hear in security. But in the case of Jinaga, we treat distribution of facts as something different from the authorization of those facts. In a lot of systems, you'll have things like role-based authorization, where you are authorized because you have a certain role to perform certain actions, and And so those actions might be read, they might be write, they they might they might be administer, and in Jinaga we treat things differently. It's not all actions are not the same. Those actions that cause changes, they record facts. Are you authorized to record that fact? Those actions that just run queries, just retrieve information, those distribute facts to you. So the distribution rules tell the replicator who is allowed to ask for which facts. So they take on very different shapes, and so they have different endpoints, different commands inside of the Jinaga command line tool in order to set those up. So in order to code those up, you need to write some rules in your application. Since you don't run the replicator, at least if you're using this replicator as a service, then that means that that you don't need to write these rules and deploy them to the server, because you don't run the server. You let me take care of that for you here. If you did run the server yourself, you could use janaga-server, run a server as a node application, and then you could deploy the rules yourself. So that's all supported right now. And there will be a story for doing the same thing using the Docker image. So you can create a container that has authorization and distribution rules, and also does, would it do authentication? No, I think I would let you do authentication on your own. So that's, so these rules here are, or this tool here is how you upload those rules to a replicator as a service. Okay, so you write the rules inside of your code, and because you are just writing the client-side code, you can write these rules in the client. But they're not executed in the client, they're executed in the replicator. You write them in the client so that you can generate those rules and upload them to the replicator. That's what we're going to do. So let's switch over to an application here. This is Blog Maui, and you might need to install extra components. We'll worry about that later. So Blog Maui is an example application that lets you manage a blog, and it has a Maui interface on top of it. So if we go to Jinaga config, we will see this is how we set up the Jinaga client. So real quick, the way that that I like to do this in a Maui application is that the settings object right here, you can see this is a partial class, and it defines some properties. And then we've got this verify function that just makes sure that those properties are properly set. So if you don't set the replicator URL and it stays as the default value, then it's going to throw an exception. So inside of config, create settings, verify, and then use it. Now, this is a partial class, which means that you can create your own instance of it. So your own, you can implement the other half of it. So we've got the other half partial, and so here we set the replicator URL, the auth URL, the access token, the client ID. That's so you can do the authentication. And all of that information is available right here. Let's go back to the blog replicator. Right here inside of the replicator as a service. So I've already got this N25E. That is my replicator URL. The auth URL and access token come from here, or the auth URL and token URL come from here. And then the client ID comes from right here. And that is how we can set up our authentication. So that means each developer can create their own replicator as a service, create their own settings.local.cs. This one is not checked into the repository, and so that means everybody's got their own. And then when you go to CI/CD, then you can have a different one, a different partial that you use during the build, and then package up those settings so that they get shipped to the store. That's what we're doing here. So we've got this replicator set up with this particular application. So now we also have these security endpoints. Let me show you real quick how these security endpoints work. And so to do that, let me install another tool. Let's take a little diversion. I just learned about this HTTP Yak tool. So this is pretty awesome. You can create a file that represents an HTTP request, and then you can check that file into source control. You can share that with other people, and you can execute it using HTTP Yak in Visual Studio Code. So you can think of it as a replacement for Postman, and that's exactly how we're going to use it today. So this is a post that I would usually export a collection, share that with somebody else. They would import it into Postman, set up an environment, and they would have all that stuff. So we will use those same ideas, but instead do that all through source code, and that's what HTTP Yak lets you do. So I've got it installed. Let's create a couple of files here just to keep things nice and clean. Let me create a brand new folder, and I will call this examples. Okay, so there's a new file. I'm going to this is what I'm going to use in order to clear my authorization rules. So clear authorization. Oops. Authorization dot HTTP. So this is an HTTP file, and now HTTP Yak can understand what to do with an HTTP file. So we've got the little type over here. It's detected it as HTTP, and now if I were to write post, I can do an HTTP post to some endpoint. We see now we've already got the send button showing up because of HTTP Yak. So the endpoint that I want to send something to, I want to clear out my authorization rules, because I've already run through this for practice, so I need to make sure that everything is nice and clear. So I've got my HTTP post. Now I need to set some headers, like the authorization header, which is really about authentication. HTTP named it badly. And so we can set a bearer for authorization, and the bearer token is this secret. So let me go ahead and dox myself and show you that secret. I'll change it. All right, so now I want to post some authorization rules. So we got /authorization, and then this is how I prove that I own this replicator, so nobody else can change the authorization rules and break my security. So the authorization rules that I want to send are the empty set. So authorization empty. Post that up there, and interesting. This input substring is not a function. I don't know why I got that. I know that there's a version number out here. I might have forgotten that. Okay. Yeah. So that might just be a bad error message coming out of HTTP Yak. I forgot to put the HTTP error message. So, or the HTTP version. 1.01 is fine. 2.0 is fine. Okay, cannot post to blah, 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 authorization. Oh. Okay. Let's get a little bit of help here. Close this down. Here we have an example post to a URL. And yeah, it doesn't have an HTTP version number. So, okay, that's probably a bad error message coming out of my stuff. Yeah. Okay, so I need to figure out what is going on with that. Okay, there's another way to clear this out. We will worry about that later. Okay, let's talk about how to use what we came here for, the Jinaga tool to do that. So basically, Jinaga tool does what we were trying to do here. It does an HTTP post to my authorization endpoint using my bearer token in order to set new authorization rules. And it also calls the code in the assembly in order to generate the text for those authorization rules. And that way you can use this to write your rules within your model itself, and then use the tool during CI/CD to deploy it to the replicator. So let's go ahead and write some rules. So we're in blog Maui. We're going back to Jinaga config, and I need to update my my NuGet package for Jinaga so that I can start to write some rules. Okay, that's the only one that I need to update. And that allows me to write some authorization rules. So I will have a private static function called authorize. This returns an authorization rules, and it takes authorization rules. We'll call that R. And I like to do this as a lambda kind of thing. So just out of the box, we can do the identity function, and that is no authorization rules. Okay, let's start with that. Let's just start nice and simple. We've got no authorization rules. I want to now deploy these no authorization rules to my replicator. Where's my replicator? There's my replicator. I want to deploy that to that. So in order to get these authorization rules out, I will need a public static authorize function that returns a string and takes no parameters. So we can use overloading here. That's fine. Or we can give this a different name. This is really our own private method that we use to organize our authorization rules. So in order to authorize, what I will need to do is call authorization rules dot describe, and I pass in the authorization function. And not the authorize function. Okay, so that says run this function, grab those rules, turn them into a string, and then return that. So now I've got I'll make this a public static class called Java config, Jinaga config, and then it has a public static method called authorize. And that is what the tool needs in order to get those authorization rules. So let's get the tool installed. I will go to the command line and I will .NET install, or .NET tool install let's bring in some posh git. Okay, so I happen to be, let's go out one level. Doesn't really matter where I am. Okay, so I want to put together, or I want to .NET tool install Jinaga tool. And so it's going to go out to NuGet, and it's going to grab the Jinaga tool package, install that globally, and so now I've got .NET Jinaga. And so this is what I need to do. Deploy authorization, give it the assembly, the endpoint, and the secret. Let's open up Notepad so that I can get that Control plus says, yeah, it's not zooming in. What's the matter with you? Okay. Well, so we want to .NET Jinaga deploy authorization. .NET Jinaga deploy authorization. And then I need the assembly. So what is my assembly? Well, if I go to my build output, then I can see we've got a few packages that we can't build. Oh my goodness. Okay, there's one package that we can build. All right, that one will work. I need to update my stuff. I shouldn't have ignored that error message that was showing up over here. Okay, so we've got the Windows version of Blog Maui DLL. That is the assembly. Next, we need the endpoint, or I can take a look at this endpoint. Okay, so where's the endpoint? I get that from here, the authorization endpoint. Copy that. Paste that into my command line here. Oh, I need my little backticks so I can do multi-line. And now, the last thing that I need is the secret. So, doxing myself again. Here's the secret. Copy that in there. Okay, go ahead and type that secret in, and you'll be able to change my authorization rules. Okay, now, when you set this up in CI/CD, of course you'll make this a variable, and that will be a variable, and this one you'll want to make a secret in your CI/CD server. Then you can, in CI/CD, run that command line, and what it will do is it will look for a method called Jinaga config authorization. Okay, I gave the method the wrong name. Authorization. It looked for a method with that name. So let me build again. And then it'll call that method, grab the string, and then post it to this URL with this bearer token. That's all it does. All right, let's try it again now that we have built with the authorization method. Okay, And so now the authorization has been deployed. All right. So that means that I have now expressed my authorization rules, empty as they are, inside of the code, and then deployed that to the replicator as a service. So now I don't want to clear authorization anymore. I want to actually make a call to try to write some data. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to take this information here that I was posting with Postman, and I'm going to try to create blog posts. Let's start a brand new file. This is going to be create blog posts.http. So I'm going to post to a URL that I'll talk about in a little bit. That is the content that I will post. That might have been the thing, content type. That might have been what I was missing. But let's check. The URL that I want to post to is the replicator URL. This replicator is not published. Let's go ahead and publish it. Boom. And that will make it available online. Okay, so post to that URL. That now becomes the API for my thing. Let's go ahead and set the content type to what is it? Application. Oh no, text/plain. That is the content type. So when I post those facts, what the intent is to create this information in the replicator. Basically, do a bunch of inserts. I try to do that, and it's going to say I can't post to this endpoint. Oh, right. Yeah, because that's just the raw endpoint. What I really want to post to is /right. Oops, other slash. Post to /right. Boom. And there we go. It rejected 5 facts. I've typed blog post, blog publish, blog post title. Perfect. That means that the authorization is working. It is rejecting my attempts to write some unauthorized data. So let's go ahead and authorize the site. Okay. So I can write a simple authorization rule. So let's say r.any. I've already got the r. Let me do the .any. And the type that I want is site. And so this is an authorization rule that says anybody can create a site. So this is blog.site. And that's what we're trying to post here. It's got a domain. Here's the domain. It's not a very good authorization rule, but it is an authorization rule. And so I can, let's see if there's a way that I can just build for Windows. Well, probably not. If I tried to run it, then it would just build for Windows, but I really don't want to run it. So let's take that one simple authorization rule and let's deploy that. So we go back to the command line, deploy it, and now what we expect to see, if we come back here and where is code? There it is. We come back here and we try to run this, then instead of rejecting these 5 facts, including the blog, oh, it didn't say that it rejected the blog site. That's interesting. Yeah, so the 5 facts it's talking about were these 5. That's curious. It should have rejected the blog site itself. Okay, well let's log that bug. So logged. And let's try to get the blog post authorized. Okay. So again, we're going to do a bad but demonstrable authorization rule, so anybody can create a blog post. It has a site and a created at. And that's what we have here. Blog post. It has a site, which we call site. Okay, so we have to make sure that the names match. That's just site. And then it's got the created at. That's the created at. Perfect. Okay. Now when I try to, well, let's try to send this. It still rejects. You know what? I'm thinking that it didn't actually clear out my rules. This is not what I was expecting to see. I didn't rerun the authorization rules after creating this line. I mean, in fact, I haven't even saved the file. So, yeah, I think we're still looking at some old authorization rules. Okay. Let's double check here. We've got any N25E. Yeah, that is the one that we're talking about here, N25E. And it wasn't even published before, so alright. Definitely some interesting things to work through here. But let me go ahead and skip ahead then. This is all work in progress. Let me skip ahead to what the authorization rules really should look like. I mean, these are bad authorization rules. What we really want to do is to control who can create a site and who can post to it. So that means that, first of all, this model is insufficient. What I really need to do is to know which user created the site. So let's include the site's creator as a predecessor. And now we can write a rule that only the creator can post to the site. Let's go ahead and give that a try. Going back to config, I do want anybody to be able to create a user. The user itself, by the way, is really just a fact that has a public key. There we go. It's just jinaga.user. It's got a public key. This is in the Jinaga package itself. So Jinaga knows what a user is. So that means if you were to say, hey, that person's a user, you can do that. You've got their public key. No problem there. So that's why we use any for users. But then we don't want just anybody to create a site. We want this type to have a very specific rule. That rule is that for this given site, who can create it? The site.creator. That's it. So if I see a fact show up for a particular that is a site, then I can inspect the creator and I can say, well, is that the actual logged in user? If so, then I'll allow it. But if you're saying that, I'm logged in as Michael, and then I said, okay, here's a site that was created by Jan, trust me, you'll say, nope, that actually has to be Jan that tells me about that fact. Why is that important? Well, because type post, that has another rule where post.site.creator. So a post can only be expressed, it can only be created by the creator of the site. So you can't have somebody else posting to your site. That's what that says. So that sets up the authorization rule. that's what we really want this thing to look like. So let's do a build. Let's do a deploy. And now let's change up our model a little bit, our request. So it's no longer that we just say that the site has a domain. Now we have to say that the site has a creator. So who is that creator? I'm going to use the special word me. Me resolves to the user who is logged in. So that means let's go ahead and run it like this and see if that has any problems. What I would expect is that because nobody is logged in, I don't have any authorization authorized header here, then it's going to say that me is an undefined word. Let's try it. The fact me has not been defined. Perfect. Okay. I like it. So let's authorize. I'm going to authorize using this information here. So we're actually authenticating. It's the authorization header. So now we're authenticating. Authorization is who can do what. Authenticate is who are you. So to authenticate, we need to use these things that I already set up with Apple. So I've got some callback URLs. I've got the auth URL and client ID. And so this is going to authenticate using Pixie against, you can see here, repdev.jinaga.com, which then is going to authenticate with Apple. Once it finds out who you are, then it says, okay, this is the user that they represent, and it'll get that token back to you. So that means that I'm going to authorize using OAuth AUTH2, and there's some more stuff that goes here, but I can't remember what it is. Let's just give it a shot and see what it does. I hit run. It says missing configuration OAuth token endpoint. Let's take a look here. So I need the OAuth2 token endpoint, the OAuth2 client ID, and the OAuth2 client secret. Well, I'm not going to be using client ID and client secret. That's right. It defaults to using client credentials. So instead, I want to use authorization code. And all of the, let me go ahead and turn off Copilot for right now. Thank you for the help, but you don't really know what's going on. So all of the documentation for how you can set up authorization using OAuth2 is in HTTP Yak. So send that, and now we're getting some different missing configuration. So we've got the token endpoint, the authorization endpoint, and the client ID. Okay, so that is using the authorization code. So I don't have any client secret, but instead now I've got a token endpoint. So let me set up the configuration for that. The configuration goes nicely enough into a new file. So let's create a new file that we will call .env.local. So if you are a fan of Node or any of the JavaScript frameworks, you might find that you recognize this .env.local stuff. So this is how you would, for example, in React Native, bundle up some environment settings that go inside of the application. So .env is your default settings, and then you can do a .env.local that overrides things locally. And you would usually just ignore env local. That way each developer can set up their own settings. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to set these configurations. So OAuth2 token endpoint, OAuth2 authorization endpoint, and OAuth2 client ID. So that is equal to the token endpoint. That one there. The auth token. And then authorization endpoint, that is equal to this auth URL here. Auth apple. And auth to client ID, here's our client ID. And it's equal to that. None of these are secrets. They actually get shipped with the application. And because we are not shipping any secrets, we need to use something called Pixie. Pixie will protect our client even though it doesn't have a secret to prove that it's the correct client. It does that by generating a one-time secret on the client and doing the handshake and then proving that it had that secret. Right now, by default, it's not set up to use Pixie, so when I send, I'm going to get another missing configuration. Oh wait, this is just saying that it is not using the env local. Let's try this. Let's select the environment local. Okay, now let's send it. Here we go. It's sending, so it's calling the browser, and it has created this URL. It's got the client ID, it's got the callback URL, all that stuff, but it's missing challenge, code challenge, and code challenge method. And these are parameters that are added in order to do the Pixie handshake. So I have to tell HTTP Yak to use Pixie. And I do that with OAuth to use Pixie equal true. Okay, cancel that. Come back to the HTTP, and now let's try this again. And this time, it creates a client secret and uses the SHA-256 method. So that means that I can log into my Apple account. It redirects, it says, yeah, do you want to use this to log into Blog Maui? Yes, I do. And then it redirects back to my my replicator, which then goes back to localhost 3000 in order to say, yep, we have the token that is received. So we should now be doing the call with the token. There it goes. All right, so now we made the call with the token. And so it knows who I am. So that means it's been able to set the variable. But now it says that my blog site, blog post, published title, all three of these titles are unauthorized. Okay. So that's telling me, yeah, let's go ahead and get rid of this one. Don't want that one. That's telling me that I did something here with these rules. It didn't quite work. Oh, okay. I had a build error, so it wasn't even able to build and deploy the updated rules. So let's deploy a new site. Yeah, what I'm going to do is var user. I've got user and I've got profile, and I'm going to await janaga config.j.login, which I'm still working on, so it's not deployed to NuGet yet. So, okay, that's what login is going to look like in the future. But for right now, we'll say user equals new user, and I've got a fake public key. So this at least will let it compile. All right, try to compile. And yeah, so we're back to being able to build the Windows one. So let's deploy the rules using that Windows DLL, and then let's try sending this again. And this time, it still says site posts published title. Okay. So the site should be authorized because creator is the logged in user. And that is what we are trying to do here in authorization, is the site is authorized if the creator is the logged in user. Let's just double check the fact types, blog.site. And over here, blog.site, creator. Okay. So there's some debugging to do, but at least we can see this is the intent. I can write my my facts. I can write rules that describe who is authorized to record those facts, and then I can describe those authorization rules and upload those to a replicator. The replicator has this endpoint in order to receive those rules, and then it has, we've already talked about on this channel how to set up the authentication. So we've got the authentication there. We are using localhost 3000 /callback in order to get that back into HTTP Yak. And so we should be able to, as we've already seen, log in and it should know who we are. But because of these rules, it should also know what we are allowed to do. Well, that is the intent. Let's return again next week and see if I can actually get this demo working, and we can get those rules updated and running inside of the replicator. I will let you know when we meet again what the outcome is. Why was it that the rules were not getting updated inside of the replicator? Why was it that we weren't able to create a post? And then Jan will be back. We will talk about how close we are to Jan being able to write code like this and deploy it to a mobile application using Maui and back that application with a replicator. All right, but until then, please you join in next week, and let's see where we are with Jinaga. Right, take care.